Hello, I'm Robert. I'm proud to be part of the Feeds Eye team that's rethinking the way, really, the approach to fighting financial crime in the digital age. We're leaving all the clever tech behind today, and what we're going to really home in on is looking behind the scenes, digging down into that murkier world about where scams and the related mule activity actually starts. I'm very pleased to have with me Jim Browning, who's been spending many long days looking into this and hopefully give us some really good insights into the origins of this criminal activity. So, Jim, would you like to introduce yourself and say
Yeah,
hi?
hi there. I'm Jim Browning. Some people may recognize my voice because I'm a YouTuber, but I don't show my face on YouTube, primarily because I disrupt multi-million-dollar scams. So some people may recognize my voice. If so, hello, and yeah, it's nice to be here, and thanks for having me along.
Thanks, Jim. I'm sure we're going to get into some really interesting conversations and maybe even have to share a few things and some of the insights that we have. Maybe just to set the scene, you could just maybe talk through one of the recent scams you've seen. Just tell us what you do basically and what that reveals and what we can learn from it, I guess.
If you're not familiar with what I do, is I take on scammers and I do the very thing that you're not supposed to do, which is pick up the phone and engage with scammers. But I go a little bit further than that, because if they want to get access to my computer, I deliberately let them get that access for the reason that I can run the scam in reverse. So if they connect to my computer, I have it set up in a way that I can go back to their computer. And when I can do that, it reveals an awful lot about their scams. And particularly, it means I can hear what their conversations are with victims.
Mm-hmm.
So I can really get into depth in how they operate the scams. And even sometimes, if they're not particularly well set up, I can even see them. So either through their webcams on their computers, or sometimes they have CCTV. So if I can do that, I can really unravel and unwrap those scams.
Yeah, because we know that obviously as part of this scam process, the money has to go somewhere. That has to go into one of these fraudster or criminal accounts, being the mule accounts. But we can come on to that later. I think maybe to make this more clear for people to understand, let's talk about maybe an example where a specific. I think impersonation scams has been particularly prevalent recently, and some of the steps that go through, and just maybe see it from the victim side as well. Really.
By far and away, the most common scams that I see are impersonation of not only banks, but typically large organizations like Amazon or maybe the HMRC in the UK, so a tax authority. So scammers, if there is a big business or someone who takes money from you in some shape or form, they will impersonate that group of people. But like I say, the big one is probably bank impersonation. So scammers will call you up with a robotic call and they'll say that some money has been taken from your account. And that, unfortunately, is quite similar to real messages which banks may play to you. And you're obviously meant to engage with them. And unfortunately, some people do engage with the scammer.
So really what you're saying is the first part of this is it's a numbers game. Yeah, it's a wide blast of messages, voice messages or text messages. Some people will pick up on that. A lot of people will recognize immediately that's not something that a normal bank or payment provider will be asking you, and they just ignore it. But there unfortunately are some that don't recognize that, and for whatever moment, because they may be in a vulnerable moment in their lives. I was telling you this morning actually about my mother, right? So 3 weeks ago, she got a text message. She immediately spotted that it was a potential scam, and said, "Great, relax, that's fine. Pleased to hear it." 3 weeks later, she actually responded because it said, "Hi, Mum, I lost my phone last night." And the day before, my sister happened to tell my mum that she was going out. So it just hit at that vulnerable moment and she responded. So, it can be anybody, anytime. But it starts with that wide broadcast, right? And seeing who bites.
Correct. And I because I can see what the scammers do, I also see the systems they use to contact their victims. So, like you say, it is a pure numbers game. Most people are familiar with robotic calls, but like you say, more recently it has been these Hello Mum scams, and that is a mass broadcast of an SMS message or a WhatsApp message. And of course, when you dig into that, the vast majority of people, at least initially, know that that's a scam and will just ignore the message or hang up the call whenever they figure out, yes, it is definitely a scam. But of course, if you're playing thousands and thousands of these messages or sending thousands of these, you are bound to get someone whose guard is down, they're just having an off day, or they're just not with it. I mean, some people, scammers, for example, deliberately target UK phone lines, as in landlines, during the day because they're more likely to get older people. And unfortunately, the majority of robocalls end up with an older victim. And it's a sad case of affairs, but that's exactly why they do this. I've watched scammers. They run a 24/7 operation, and they will deliberately target landlines in whatever continent happens to be in the daytime. So they'll start with Australia, move to Europe, and then in the evening shift, they will target the USA. So it is a very wide encompassing scam. And if you're a scammer, you will use exactly the same lines on whatever country you happen to be targeting.
So these aren't individual people just trying to make some money for themselves. Tell us a little bit more about how these are organized.
Because I've been doing this for quite a number of years now, I have been able to unpick the organization sometimes. Sometimes you only get the bare minimum of information. Of course, scammers always give fake names, but when you can see their computers, you sometimes can pick up on their organizational structure, and that for me is quite a fascinating thing. But what you find is scammers always work in pairs. So the person who makes the phone call or receives the phone call, they're the opener. They call them the opener. They're usually, their English isn't quite as good as the other person, which is the closer. The closer is the person who deals with the money aspect of it. So if you're caught in a scam, almost inevitably you will be speaking to at least two people. And the opener probably only gets a very small cut of whatever money they steal. The closer will get probably double that. But together when they work, they steal potentially £1,000, dollars. But again, it's not the people at the very bottom of the ladder who really make the money. The people who really make the huge amounts of money, and we're talking millions potentially, are the guys who run the call centers themselves. And I uncovered a group called Faremart, and they're quite a sophisticated organization because, like most large organizations, they won't purely run scams. They will have a legitimate sidearm. So if you can imagine a business, this Faremart was a travel agency, and they would have made thousands of phone calls legitimately, and that was the front for their business. And what they were really doing was making a lot more money running a scam operation literally in the office behind where the main front office was. So it was literally a back office operation. And what they would do is make tens of thousands of calls internationally. And they were pretending that, for example, there was something wrong with your computer. They were pretending to be Microsoft, but of course they had nothing to do with Microsoft. And what they would do is make thousands of these phone calls. Eventually they'll get somebody to believe them, and they would take access of their computer, make up the fact that there was some problem on their computer, there really wasn't, and charge them an extortionate amount of money for fixing a non-existing problem. But the guy who was running that operation, he employed maybe 30 scammers during the evening time and maybe 10 or 12 people during the daytime. That was his legitimate business. And he was making well over $2 million a year running that sort of operation. He lived in a penthouse apartment, and his rent was something like $6,000 a month, which you'd think would be quite high for a very large city. In New Delhi, where he was, that is completely unheard of. So he was living in the lap of luxury. He was overlooking a golf course and an international size swimming pool, and we'd be driving his Porsche and things like that. But it was purely out of his scamming operation, and that was maybe a medium-sized operation. There are much bigger ones as well, but the guys at the top can make literally millions out of these scams. Guys on the phones, yeah, not so much, but certainly they would make a lot more than they would in a legitimate job.
And so let's just talk through one of these impersonation scams then. So how does it start? So we realize that there's a sort of numbers game up front. Yeah, things get blasted out. Most people will be wise and ignore it. Some people get hooked. So how does that hook first get sort of captured and placed?
I guess it depends on the scam. I'll maybe focus on the bank impersonation scam, because that's the one that probably most people are familiar with. That whole scam, it really starts off with a fairly normal sounding message, as in, we have detected a fraudulent payment, and there'll be a specific amount, maybe £300, $300, and if you didn't make a purchase to Amazon today, please press 1 to speak to someone. And of course, nobody is going to look at that message. Most people know that that's probably a scam. Amazon don't contact you. Your bank normally don't contact you with those sorts of messages, but it could be plausible. And when you press 1, you're speaking to a scammer. Now, the phone call itself, you won't be able to tell from the phone number that may appear on your display whether this is a legitimate call or not. It may appear as international, which is a bit of a red flag, but sometimes it just appears as a normal, say, UK phone number. So you can't tell just from the phone call. But when you press 1 and speak to a scammer, they will start to probe you slowly for a bit of information. They're pretending to be a bank, but they have no idea which bank you actually belong with. So they'll ask you a couple of important security questions, as they'll put it. What's your name? What's your date of birth? And if you're prepared even to give that small amount of information, then they keep the scam going. Most people should be skeptical about those sorts of calls and go, you made the phone call, you should know this. But you'd be surprised the number of people who say, all right, I must verify myself to this stranger on the phone. And they will give their name and date of birth. And after that, the scammer then starts to get clever. They still don't know which bank you're with, but they will ask you to check certain things. Like they'll say, well, have you recently made any transactions? And of course, there won't be any of the sort of ilk that the message would have done. So what they'll typically do then is say, can you tell me what your sort code is? And from a bank sort code, it's very easy to look up a sort code, and that will tell you, number one, which bank that is. So is it Barclays, Lloyds, whatever? And number two, where your local branch is. So it gives you an indication roughly where your nearest bank branch is. So they can immediately pick up on that. And then from that moment, they will say, yes, I need to connect you now to Lloyd's security department or Barclays security department. Whatever lookup they've made based on that sort code, they will then start to sound a little bit more convincing. They break the scam into two sections. They will see how much information the victim will divulge first of all. And they won't blatantly ask you how much is in your bank account. They wouldn't be that obvious. But what they do is they kind of slowly build up to find that information. And they typically say, for example, can you check your most recent bank statement? Do you see anything suspicious there? And those are all kind of questions that maybe a bank would typically ask. But then they'll ask you a little bit more personal information. Well, what date have you got for that statement you're looking at? And what's the closing balance? And of course, as soon as they hear closing balance, they know how much to target. And they'll always say, that's one account. I understand you've got a savings account with us as well. And of course, that's them probing to see, is there more money that you haven't told them about? Because they're trying to get their hands on everything that they can possibly lay their hands on. And people will go, no, I don't have a savings account or an ISA savers, but somehow that doesn't always ring alarm bells as well. And they will just continue the conversation as if that never happened. But ultimately, they're after your name, your sort code, and your bank balance. And if your bank balance is sufficiently high, they will move you to the next phase of the scam. If it's low, and we'll maybe even hear this later on, they actually drop the call immediately. They'll say, oh, we've just cancelled those suspicious transactions, nothing to worry about, and they drop the call. If you haven't got enough money in your bank balance, that's end of scam. They only target people who have more than, say, £2,000. Even £1,000 may not be worth their while by the time they've laundered it through money mules. And we'll maybe get on to that in a moment.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. So look, a few stages there, right? We've identified. So there's that initial mass broadcast out. The person obviously then panics because, my God, money's been taken out of my account illegitimately. So they're already at that weak moment, that vulnerable moment. And then, as you say, the scammer gradually builds up the trust by asking some very typical questions that a bank asks you, right? How to verify, I just need to verify who you are. Can you tell me when your last transaction was? And they start to ask normal questions that probably people wouldn't think. But then when they ask about balances, of course, that is when people maybe should be triggered, right? But that's already 2 or 3 minutes into the call.
When people challenge them and say, well, you should know this, why, if you're calling me, why don't you know the sort code? If you listen to, I guess, the psychology around it, they won't answer awkward questions immediately. They will say, oh, this is a recorded line. We're doing this to make sure that your account is safe. You don't want to lose your hard-earned money. They will start to waffle a little bit. They won't answer the question directly. And then they'll ask you some other question to take you off that train of thought. So there is a degree of psychology, and they're well practiced in it. This is the thing. People always wonder why people fall for these scams. And the answer is you could very simply just have an off day. You're not concentrating on it. Something else is happening. Something coincidental has just happened. So maybe you've had an interaction with your bank. You're kind of expecting a call. There's so many reasons why some of these calls, particularly if it's a big numbers game, sound legitimate. And they are very well rehearsed in what to say to basically keep you on track for the scam. They have a set number of questions they need to ask you. They fill out a little, we can see their computer screens, they fill out a little almost spreadsheet of information. When they've got all that information, they can move to the second part of the scam.
And before they do that, I think they obviously want to try and isolate that victim, keep them away from engaging with other people. And again, you talk about techniques for doing that. So
yeah, and that's the one very obvious thing that comes out. If you listen to these calls, the last thing they want is the victim to talk to anyone else. And that includes family members. So some of the time you will hear that maybe it's an elderly person and they're not particularly mobile. And their son or daughter maybe would take them to the shops or to the bank or whatever. They do not want that, because if that person speaks to someone else, they may get a warning it's a scam. So they'll always say to the victim, can't you just take a taxi today? We'll even pay for this taxi. Of course they don't. They'll just say, look, when you get to the bank, we will refund you. But of course they want to isolate someone, as you say. And once they have that victim isolated and agreeable to go into the bank, then they can do the next stage of the scam. But it's very obvious that they do not want you to talk to anyone.
Maybe some more education could go around that. And I know that banks are working very hard. Everybody's working hard about getting the right messages out there. But as you say, people are aware of the messages, but sometimes it just catches you at the wrong time.
True. I mean, it's one big hallmark of a scam is someone is asking you to keep something quiet or a secret. Okay, and it kind of applies to more than just scams, to be honest. If someone's asking you to keep something quiet, that should be ringing alarm bells on its own. Okay, there is no good reason why, if there's some problem in your bank, that you can't talk to anyone else about it. And if someone's saying you mustn't tell this to anyone else, that should be ringing alarm bells.
Okay, so that's the first stage. And so the balance is revealed, as you say, they current account first, and then if they dig deeper, they might ask about savings accounts. So then they find that they've got a potential victim here, right? So they move on to the next stage. So can you just talk us through what happens next? So there's the cash in the bank. Let's assume that the victim has agreed either to do online banking or preferably, as you say, go to the branch. Then how does it develop from there?
So the go to the branch thing is actually a bit of a surprise. Probably to most people think that, well, if you reveal your credit card information, that's all they need. No, there's more than that. The scammers rely on the victim to move money. Okay, and that's the important thing out of all of this. It is not enough just to give personal details. That the scammers can't generally take money as a result of that. They have to rely on the victim making a transaction using the victim's own computer, or alternatively, they will persuade them to go into the bank. And that's what makes the bank scam so much more convincing, because they'll use the line, if we need you to come down to the branch today to fix this security problem, do you think you could do that? And they'll suss out whether the victim can actually travel that day. They want them to go almost immediately, even if they have to take a taxi or whatever. And the reason for that is, number one, they can't talk to anybody, but number two, actually, to go into your local bank branch after a potential security scare sounds like a kind of thing that your bank would tell you to do. And it makes the story that much more convincing. But before you go into the branch, they will prime their victims what to say. And that's really what the second stage of the scam is. So typically they will disengage the call and say, I'm going to give you a security number for Lloyd's or Barclays or whatever. You need to phone this number. And that's where the second stage of the scam comes in. So when the victim calls that number, and they'll of course be told to do this immediately, and your funds are at risk if you don't make the call immediately. So there's almost no gap between the first stage and the second stage of the scam. The victim will be told to make that call, and the person on the second stage of the scam has got better English. Okay, so the scammer might have a very heavy foreign accent. The second stage of the scammer will sound a lot more professional, because this is the closer. This is the guy who's going to get the money. And they will then persuade the victim that actually the reason why there's these suspicious transactions is there may be somebody in your local bank branch trying to steal that money. That's the story that they will tell. And again, this feeds into the narrative that the victim then has to become part of what they'll describe as an investigation. Okay, and they'll say that your money is at risk. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up a new bank account for you. Okay, and again, that sounds, if there's a bank account which the victim has in that bank, then opening up another account may be the right thing that a bank could do. They're not quite sure, but they'll also have a narrative that goes with that. So number one, somebody in your local branch is stealing your money, so you can't mention anything about this investigation. If you go into the bank branch, you can't tell them that you've had a phone call. And more specifically, when you move that money, they will get the victim to rehearse a story, because what they'll say is they don't want anyone in the branch to be alerted to this investigation. And what they really want them to do is to move money so that they can catch the culprit in the bank red-handed when that money moves. So this is all to build up a narrative for someone to go in and transfer all of their money, because they'll know how much is there, to another bank account. And they'll even say, look, we're going to change your name temporarily so that whoever's stealing your money doesn't know it's you. And that's the excuse why you're moving money to a new name on a bank account, a new sort code, a new account number, and they'll give you all three of those bits of information. So when you as a victim go into the bank, you're trained not to say anything to the teller, even though there will be security questions asked. How do you know this person? And they will have rehearsed with the victim what they're going to say. So they'll say to the victim, if someone asks you who this is, you have to say, that's my brother-in-law, sister-in-law. Why are you moving the money? And they get the victim to rehearse the reason, and it'll be something like to help with their mortgage payments, or they're doing a home decoration or whatever it is. But they'll have rehearsed that with the victim in advance. So basically the victim will go in and will have certain security questions asked of them, but they have trained the victim what to say, and eventually they're hoping that they're going to move that money. And sadly, it is quite effective. So if they can get somebody to go in They will know exactly how much is in their account. So they will say, make this transfer to this person on this new bank account, and there will be this amount. And they know they've got that amount in their bank account. So it's one of those scams that you think that is going to rob someone of every penny that they've got. And the scammers do not care about this. They are just after their cut of that money. And if you listen to some of the calls, you wonder how on earth someone can have a conscience to do this to people who are vulnerable, elderly, at risk in some shape or form. But yet this happens day in, day out.
So what happens in the scenario where maybe the person can't get into the branch? I mean, what's the next step then? What's the other option for the scammer?
Sometimes they will say, do you do online banking? Okay, and they deliberately ask that question, or do you make online purchases, to see whether, for example, the credit card or debit card has already been registered for online transactions, and could they, for example, get the credit card or debit card information, because if they then use that to make a money transfer, which they can do, they can just go on to money transfer sites, there's quite a few of them, put in the victim's details, including their credit card number, and make a money transfer to some foreign bank account. And if that credit or debit card has already been registered to do that, then they have more chance of this working. So they ask questions that are going to tell them, am I likely to be able to use this card, or will it be flagged up immediately? So there's definitely some ways they will ask you to suss out just how successful they'll be.
Maybe you can just describe a little bit about how you help the victims and how you can actually, in many cases, stop the victims from being scammed, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, so I'm in a fairly unique position because I can hear the scam calls live, and because I've got access to the scammers' computers, I can see the phone numbers that they're calling. So that gives me, of course, an opportunity to call the victim. So as I hear the calls, if I see that the victim is falling for it, and it's fairly easy to tell this because I can see how long the victims have been on phone calls. So I deliberately look at the calls which are lasting, say, more than 10 minutes, and I'll take a note of those numbers. And because I can switch between the calls, I can hear them. If I know that someone has been persuaded to at least go to the second stage, or worse, just about to go to the bank itself, I can call the victim directly and say, look, this whole thing is a scam. Whatever you do, either don't call the money or don't go to the bank, because it's a scam. If you want to check it out with the bank, use the phone number on the back of your card to check the bank, and not some other number that you may have been given by the scammers, because that's what they do. They pretend to be a security department. They will give the victim a phone number, but it is for yet another scammer. So yes, I can intercept it that way, and I have been reasonably successful at stopping some of these. If you've ever had a phone call, sometimes I don't give the name as Jim Browning, because sometimes if the scammers call the victim back saying, why haven't you gone to the bank? Some of them in the past have said, I've had a phone call from Jim Browning, and he says this whole thing's a scam. And that unfortunately means that the scammers are then wise to the fact that their systems have been infiltrated by me. They know my name, and they will then be suspicious, and I can lose I have a degree of control over the victims if I can hear the scam calls, but as soon as the victim mentions my name to scammers, I have seen them close up shop very quickly, and they know that there's some sort of compromise has happened. So I tend not to use that name. But sometimes, though, I actually have to call the bank branch that the victim's going to. So there was a call even the day before yesterday where I thought that the victim had disengaged and basically didn't figure out it was a scam. But I double checked. I called the number that I knew the victim had, and I spoke to the victim's wife, and she said, actually, my husband's just away to the bank. So I knew which bank branch. I actually asked her, well, what is your local bank branch? I knew the bank name, I knew the bank branch, and I phoned the bank branch to say, look, this older man, his name is whatever it was, is going to your bank branch. can you look out for him because he is being scammed? And they took that information, and I'm hoping, because I'm not 100% sure, I'm hoping they were able to use that to stop him. I have had other calls like that in the past where I did get the feedback from the bank to say, yes, we were able to stop it. This person has come into the bank. They did have a phone in their pocket. Sometimes the scammer will want to keep the victim on a mobile phone, but if they don't have a mobile phone, they were able to stop the scam in time. So I have been reasonably successful in that.
And what's the type of reactions you get? So you've managed to intercept, you've got through to the victim, you tell them it's a scam. Imagine there's a number of different reactions.
I mean, most of the time, as you'd imagine, huge relief, because obviously they've believed the story till that point. They may have even rehearsed what they were going to say to the bank, so they really do believe that their money was at risk. And at this point, it's a question of two things. It's, number one, there was nothing wrong with their account, first of all. There hasn't been money taken out of it. Number two, I was just about to lose that money. So the vast majority of people are absolutely elated by the fact that this has been stopped, as you can imagine. But some, believe it or not, actually trust the scammers more. Don't forget, they have been on the phone with the scammer for maybe more than an hour, built up a rapport with them, and the scammers use language like, oh, you sound just like my grandmother, you sound just like my grandfather. They have a relationship with the victim, believe it or not. And I've had cases where I've had, for example, a victim in the USA who'd been persuaded to withdraw cash from her bank account. And I, believe it or not, I had the victim's phone number, but she was constantly on the phone with the scammer, so I couldn't get through to her mobile number. But what I could do is see the scammer's computer, so I knew exactly where they were directing this woman to. And what they were trying to get her to do with the cash was to put it into something called a Bitcoin ATM, which is basically like an ATM, except you can feed it with money, and that would have put that cash directly into the scammer's wallet. And I was able to see exactly where this lady was going. And I called the store, the shop that she was going to, and said, look, there's somebody coming into your store in a moment. She is being scammed. Can you warn her that whoever she's talking to on the phone is a scammer, and do not put money into that machine? And the lady did go in. I could hear the conversation on the scammer's phone where she was being warned that she was being scammed. And the victim was just saying, no, I have this in hand. Don't worry about it. I know what I'm doing. And she was, despite somebody in her face saying you're being scammed, she still trusted the scammers more. She was deflected away from that one store. But of course, the scammers just said, look, don't worry about them. Go to the next store and do the same thing again. I then said, well, okay, if a storekeeper, a shopkeeper isn't going to be good enough to stop this victim, I'll try the police in her local area. And that's exactly what I did. I phoned what's called the Warren Police. This is in the USA. Phoned her police department and said, there is somebody about to have money stolen. She's going to such and such a store in your area. Could you send somebody there to tell her she's being scammed? And the police actually said to me, sorry, a crime hasn't been committed and there's nothing we can do. So I had to watch and I could see the scammers on the CCTV. They were celebrating when she reached the next store, because they were then instructing her to put her money into this machine. It was going straight into their wallets. It was absolutely horrendous to watch.
So that's one of the sadder stories, right?
One of the sadder ones,
you couldn't intercept. I think other times, though, I think you get through, some people say something like shock of relief, but other people almost feel like they're going to get into trouble if they don't do what they've been instructed.
It's not easy, because don't forget, I've done just what the scammer's done. I phoned up a complete stranger, and the first person to call him or her says, your bank account's at risk. And now I'm a second caller saying, don't worry, it's not at risk, and check with your bank. So they're not really quite sure who to believe there. And this is the difficulty, because I never know quite the right thing to say to every individual to convince them that I'm the good guy and the person who just called you beforehand is the bad guy. because how would you trust me? How do you know about me? And I've tried over a number of years to try and make the message suitable for who I'm talking to. So sometimes it's short, sharp instructions to say, banks don't make messages like that. Call them if you're unsure, or just to actually explain the whole thing to the victim. The reason why you got this call is they're sending the same call out to hundreds of people. If you check with your bank, they will confirm that none of those transactions actually happened. And in fact, they will also tell you that they don't send those sorts of messages.
Mm-hmm.
And usually people are receptive enough. Usually people have a bit of doubt in the back of their head, and just by me calling them, it'll just confirm it one way or the other. But like I say, there's a whole broad spectrum of people, and you never know quite the person you're going to be speaking to, what approach to use.
And unfortunately, this is going on all the time, as you say, 24/7. You can log on anytime. Maybe later on we'll have a quick look and see if we can see these things happening. Does it happen in other countries as well? Is it across the globe? Maybe talk through what happened in Austria last year.
So yes, absolutely, it's very international, and not only that, I suspect what's happening these days is more people in English-speaking countries like Australia, UK, USA, I think are becoming more familiar with these sorts of scams. So what I've seen more recently is the scammers adapt their tactics to target other non-English speaking countries. And some scammers indeed have been, I've seen scammers get proficiency certificates in Japanese, so that they can tap the Japanese market, as they would put it, and Spanish and German. But most of the time they rely on English. And in fact, they were targeting Austria last year, and every one of their phone calls was in English, because it tends to be that a lot of people in Europe will understand and speak English, and they would not learn German for this, but nevertheless they conducted the scams in English against people in Austria. And the group that I saw targeting the Austrians, I was able to make contact with the Austrian police, and I thankfully got through to the right person who could actually try and do something about it. So I was able to give them details of the people who had been targeted by this scam, and I also was able to give them details of the scammers who happened to be in India. The majority of telephone-based scams tend to be from India, but I was able to give them very specific information, as in where exactly this call center was. I had CCTV. I could see from their computers exactly where this location was, because if you have access to their computers, it is possible to pinpoint a position to a few meters, not just the city, but the actual location in the city. So I was able to pass it on to the right people in Austria, who liaised with their counterparts in India. And although it took longer than you would imagine, they did eventually raid that scam call center, and they did make arrests. And from the time that they actually cleared out that scam call center, all 100% of the scam calls to Austria stopped overnight. So as you can imagine, the Austrian police were pretty happy with that. And I met actually one of the police chiefs who kind of coordinated all of that last year, and he was very grateful, as you can imagine, because just through that one phone call to him, they were able to eliminate all of the scam calls in the entire country for a while. Of course, I'm sure it started up again.
Yeah. I know you're modest, Jim, but you want an award from the police, right? For that, from the Austrian police. But
I did for that one.
Yeah.
It's a rare thing, and I think the difference was there that they already had a relationship with their counterparts in India, so they were able to do something quite quickly. That's not always the case.
Right. And I think there's a few hurdles you have to come up as well. Like the story you talked about in the US, right? You need to have evidence of a crime being committed before the police will obviously engage. But because in this case, I think you actually had evidence of at least one victim losing money, and you could clearly provide that to the police, they could then substantiate their claim for why then the police needed to act. Without that clear evidence, though, you wouldn't have got the result, I think, that you did.
Yeah, and even when I do engage with the police in India, They surprisingly, I always thought just by impersonating a bank or Microsoft or Amazon, that would be enough reason for them to go in and charge someone with impersonation. But that is never enough. What they want is a victim who has actually lost money to come forward and make a statement, and you have to pinpoint exactly where the location is, and you have to get the right police jurisdiction. It's not enough. There isn't like some front door that you can go to say, here's a cybercrime happening. You guys work out where this is. That is not enough. I have to get the right police authority in the right district in India, because it's all territorial. And I was even given a spreadsheet at one point of, I think, around 57 different police stations in the city of Kolkata. And if they were saying to me, well, if you pick up a crime, you have to go to one of these 57 to report it. And I'm thinking, there's no way in this day and age that that should be the case, but that's exactly what I have to contend with.
Mm-hmm.
Pinpoint the crime, pinpoint the right police station, get the right person involved, have some victims prepared to make statements, and not everybody is, and have all of that evidence all lined up. And you think there must be a lower hurdle to climb than that, but no, that's what I'm getting.
So clearly we could be doing more, and I know sometimes you get frustrated by the fact that you can't be everywhere all the time. What are some of the things that you think could be done to maybe improve and actually help protect more victims? Is it a matter of having more Jim Brownings, or are there procedure or technical things that could be done to increase the way we actually stop things at the beginning before they even reach a payment stage?
Honestly, more Jim Brownings, I don't know about that. I think the police should be able to do legally what I do. That's the long and short of it. All I'm doing is engaging with a scammer and going further, as in to allow them access to my computer, and then I reverse that. But of course, as soon as I access someone else's computer without their permission, even though it's a scammer, in theory that's illegal. Okay, so I think that's the reason why the police don't go that far. But that's why the law should change, and to say if it's it's more than a crime is suspected, when you can prove that someone is trying to steal your money, it should be fair game to go after the criminal. It's like someone coming in to rob you and you grabbing a hold and keeping that guy until the police come. There's no reason why the police can't do that, but they need the laws to change themselves. So that's the first thing. Change the laws to balance it in favour of the police, first of all. And there's absolutely no reason why the police can't do exactly what I do. It's, if they're afraid of it being illegal, change the laws that way. And yes, in the short term, I'm taking a risk, I suppose, by kind of getting at these scammers' computers, but the only people who could ever have a problem with that are the scammers themselves. So I'm not really running a risk, because I can't really see some scammer coming up to me saying, sorry, you illegally access my computer. Because every single time that I engage with scammers, I record what I do, and I can prove 100% they were trying to steal money from me. And if they want to pursue that and kind of identify themselves to say, you shouldn't be accessing my computer, absolutely bring it on, because I can prove what was going on with that one. So in some ways I would kind of like that engagement, but it's just not going to happen.
Well, laws can change, right? And I think it's a very grey area as well. I think that you said also in some areas you're actually being given access. So they've actually been granted access to their computers. So again, that I guess is more legitimate than...
Correct. And that's what's happening more and more, is that you have disgruntled scammers or people who grow a conscience, I guess, to say, look, I'm not making the money here. It's the guys at the top. I can see what's going on. I feel bad about what I'm doing. And sometimes the scammers, as you say, will give me access to their computers so that I can eventually produce a video about it, because that kind of educates people. But equally, because I've now got contacts in law enforcement, I can go to them and say, here's the evidence that you need to make the raid happen. And I can help prove that something illegal is going on there. So that's what happens. And even quite recently, there was a guy who's reached out to me, and he's in a what's called a pig butchering scam, but it's basically one which is a romance scam, then turns into a crypto scam. And I got very, very detailed information from him, and again, the police were able to raid the place as a result. So yes, more often than not, scammers or ex-scammers reach out to me, and I can help them get out of the situation as well.
I was going to ask you about pig butchering scams. It's very, it's a very topical theme at the moment, and I think that was Dubai based, the one you were saying.
Yeah. So another type of scam. So this is not the normal robocall one. This scam starts off where some usually nice-looking man or woman reaches out on a dating site to other people on that dating site and says, "Hello, how are you?" and just starts a normal conversation as you would on a dating site. And these are paid models, okay? So these are very glamorous looking people, and they will have plenty of photographs and videos of them shopping expensive malls and, driving posh cars and all the rest of it. And they will engage with their victims seemingly just by WhatsApp. So it's just by chatting to them initially. But of course, if you're skeptical at all, you'll say, "Look, well, could you show me your face?" Or, instead of just these photographs. And what's actually happening in this call center is they have employed models who will engage with their victims by like FaceTime or kind of Skype or whatever. So that the victims will see that this is a real person, this is a real good looking model that I'm chatting with, and they will use their real name and everything else because it is a real person. But what they don't know is they're engaging with hundreds of other people saying exactly the same lines, and there are other people who are typing things into WhatsApp pretending to be this model. And what will happen is inevitably the victim will ask, "Well, how come you've got all this money and you're driving all these posh cars and everything?" And at that point the model will say, or the supposed model will say, "I got all this through an investment scheme." So they will start to draw their victims in after a period of days or weeks or months even of having engaged with them. So they build up a trust. Okay, so there's a bit of a romance element going on, and this person thinks this is a real person. They have spoken to me face to face. I've been speaking for weeks. I do trust them, and they'll say exactly how that the victim can also make money on this crypto scheme. And of course, if the potential victim puts money into this scheme, initially it will look as if they will actually make money out of it. Okay, but the website is geared to make it look as if every victim who puts money in will be making an on-paper profit. And of course, if you look like you're making money, you'll be encouraged to invest yet more into this because you're going to make more money. But of course, it'll come to the point where you attempt to withdraw that money, and only then do you figure out, hang on, there's something wrong. And they'll initially tell you you haven't invested enough, you haven't reached a threshold, or there's tax to pay, so you have to pay that little bit more money into it again. So they'll keep at you to keep putting more and more in there. But the long and short of it is you will never see that money again. It has gone from day one directly into the scammer's wallet, and all you've been doing is feeding that system. They're fattening up the pig. Yeah, that's the pig butchering, and the butchering comes at the very end when you realise you're never going to get that money back.
I think it's, in terms of how we profile that, for example, it's a very different type of thing we'll be looking for, because obviously the first example of an impersonation scam, that's pretty much happening in real time. It's probably going to be just a one-off, right? So we have to have very different detection techniques compared with what you've just described is something that happens over days and weeks, and obviously the results potentially in multiple payments, not just one or two. These are payments that build up. So very, very different patterns to identify. And each of these different scams has these different patterns, different scenarios that we have to try and model. But some of the similarities, I think, is obviously the victim, the impact on the victim, but also the industrial scale of this. I think you said in Dubai, it's a big building where this is all devoted to this type of scam. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
well,
Yeah.
well, thanks to the insider, I actually got him to take video and audio inside so I can get a very good idea of just how they're set up. But if you can imagine an 8-story apartment block full of people who scam, and what he said was they would recruit kind of foreign nationals. I knew there were people from, Syria, Uganda, all sorts of places to run the scams. All they do is type things on a computer in English, and it will translate what they type into whatever the language of the victim is. So whether it's Spanish, Russian, and it is truly, truly international. And that entire apartment block is just scammers. So there will be at least 100 people in one of those blocks, and there's actually 4 blocks. And although he wasn't 100% sure, he was speaking to someone in a neighbouring apartment block, and they also seem to be running the scam. So it could be that all 4 of those apartment blocks were running the same scam, and it was operated by some Chinese nationals. So I could see some of their computers. He gave me access to about 8 of the computers, and you can see that it's set up with a Chinese locale. So it's apparently run by a mafia group from China who recruit people into Dubai, and what they do is they actually run the scam. And it's so far out of Dubai they could literally see the police coming from nearly a mile off. So they've strategically picked these buildings so that it specializes in scams and they can avoid attention of the police. So it's very well thought through. It's very well organized.
It's a numbers game up front, right? Lots of people sending things out. Probably most of them misfire and they don't capture anybody, but the odd one does get through and somebody's hooked, and then it goes through. But the end result is ultimately the same. You have the victim, and obviously you speak to victims on the impersonation scams. Do you ever get a chance to sort of see the reaction from the victims from these pig butchery scams? And
the pig butchering one is particularly cruel because it's affected them 2 ways. Obviously, they had the romance thing going first of all, and because the pig butchering scam encourages the victim to put yet more and more and more money into this system, and they seem to be making profits on it, it's a way that people lose their entire life savings, and that is utterly, utterly devastating. And I haven't spoken to many people in that position, truthfully, but I do get emails all of the time to say, I've just basically fallen for this crypto scam, and they will tell the story like it's the first time I've ever heard it, and yet the stories always sound exactly the same. And they will have a relationship with someone for a while, they will be making that money, but until they go to withdraw it, and that only then do they figure out it's a scam, and that's months down the line. And honestly, the sad thing is I've heard of people who have taken their own lives as a result of that, because they have had their entire life savings stolen. They have nothing more to live for. They can't believe that they've been suckered into this. And if you can imagine, they've been saving all of their lives, and this is what happens. And I've even had victims, when you hear them on the phone, they will tell you a little bit about themselves, and it's almost a privilege being able to hear some of it, because you kind of get an idea about the type of person that is falling victim to this, and they will disclose things to a scammer that you would surprise you. And some people, for example, have said, look, I'm registered blind and I've been diagnosed. I only have a year to live. And you think to yourself, surely the scammer would disengage at this point, because why would you continue with that? But I have seen them continue anyway and still try to steal that money.
with impersonation scams, for example, it may be money going into a bank, so there is a chance in many cases to get that money back. And I know banks are doing more. There's lots of conversations now across the industry about slowing down those payments. Does it have to really be, in seconds to go through? But I guess for the pig butchery scenario, there's very little chance, right? Because it's gone into crypto, as you say, gone into these investments. and also it's not really, it's not, the banks aren't really involved so much. Yeah, they're not
Yeah,
able to intervene.
yeah. Unfortunately, crypto, although it has its benefits, for a scammer, it's absolute gold dust because it's a way to get money straight into your wallet without going through the banking system. So, of course, scammers are going to default towards this. So, I think that's why in the last number of years, that particular scam has become more and more prevalent. And obviously, scammers have worked out this is a way to max. I mean, you may make thousands and thousands of phone calls or thousands of WhatsApp messages. You just need one person to lose all of their life savings to make this worthwhile, and you can get it without any recourse. Okay, you go straight into your Bitcoin wallet, and that then goes straight into your pocket. And so, yes, although crypto is seen as a way to bypass banks, and banks are greedy and everything else, it also bypasses the security of the banks, and people need to have their eyes open if they ever invest in crypto.
Mm-hmm. So far, we talked about the various stages and the similarities and the differences, but we haven't actually covered the bit where the scammer actually gets the money. Yeah. So that on the impersonation, there's a call, the victim calls back. If you're not able to intercept, then the scammer obviously has to give the account details. Maybe you can talk through that and see what you see there in terms of the destination account and how the scammers provide that and actually source those accounts.
I would love to be able to give you more detail on how exactly the money mules are recruited. So the money mules are obviously the people who receive the initial transaction from the victim. And typically that is someone with another UK bank account. So if they're targeting the UK, the money mule will also have a UK bank account. And they'll persuade the victim to go into their bank. They will have a name, a sort code, and an account number. And they will be told to make that transaction without telling the bank staff anything. And over the past number of weeks and months, I've watched one group and listened to the money mules, these accounts that they have. And almost invariably, they have Eastern European sounding names. I don't know what's in that particularly, but it may be that they're able to recruit people in Eastern European countries who are either already in the UK or maybe come to the UK with the sole purpose of setting up a bank account just so that they can run a money mule business. Very, very few times have I seen kind of English sounding names. It tends to be foreign bank accounts for whatever reason. Honestly, I don't know exactly how they recruit those people. I guess there's some sort of wide groups like Skype groups or Telegram groups where these accounts are being bought and sold. I'm on a number of Facebook groups, believe it or not, where scammers interact and they will sell UK bank accounts. They will sell ways to launder things like gift cards quite openly. So this is not in like a background. This isn't on the dark web somewhere. This is on Facebook groups. What they typically do is sell their services. Obviously, whoever's selling this will get a cut of whatever money goes through this. Scammers, whenever they steal money, they can probably get 50% of what they steal because they have to put it through a number of people to launder that money. The first person in the chain is the initial money mule. They may be aware of what's happening, or they may not be. They may have been recruited in some job opportunity and they've given their bank details and they'll be told to expect this money. They have to keep some and then pass the rest on somehow. They may or may not know that they're actually a money mule. But most, to be fair, probably do. But it's just one step in the chain. The scammers never take money directly into their own bank accounts, ever. They will always have at least one hop. So the first hop is that initial money mule. They'll be instructed to keep a portion, send the rest on through MoneyGram, Western Union, whatever other money transfer service they're told to use. That will go to someone else who will again keep a portion of it, then go on to the next hop. And what they do is they put as many different countries in that journey before it gets to the scammer as possible. So I've seen money, it is difficult to trace the money, but sometimes you can do it because I can see their computers. and they will put as many hops as they can through that without losing too much money. So usually 2 or 3 hops before it actually gets to the scammer. How they get the initial money mules, I'm never too clear.
But I think I think what surprised me is that there's no sort of ready list available necessarily in these scam centres. At that point, like stage 2, stage 3 in the scam, when the victim's about to transfer, so they're not going into the branch. Well, either if they're going into the branch or doing it online, the scammer has to provide that account number and those account details. So I think you mentioned Facebook, but also Skype, where you can just log on and just get that readily.
Yeah. I'm sitting on those Skype groups and Facebook groups as Jim Browning, and I've got my little logo on it. They don't care a jot. Okay, they will still advertise these services. But yes, the interesting thing is scammers don't know in advance, or well in advance, exactly which mule bank account they're going to use. When they start the call, they will have no idea. And it's only when they get to the stage where they know the victim is just about, they've got their coat on, they're ready to go to the bank, only at that stage do they reach out to whatever group they're in and say, I need a UK bank account. So you tend to find that when the scammer's on the phone with the victim, they will say, right, you just need to give me a few minutes and I'll get you these details. And they're obviously looking up whatever system they're on for that bank account. I would imagine that's in place because it's probably quite difficult to get those bank accounts, and they're fairly precious, and it must take a bit of effort to get that, because they'll only ever reveal it at the last second. But of course, as soon as I hear that on a phone call, I'm on to the relevant bank which owns that account, and I will tell them, honestly, to make a long story short, I just tell them, somebody's tried to scam me, without saying, look, this is another person, they have been scammed, pick this up from a phone call, too complicated. I have been scammed and I've been asked to move money to this account. And they're usually quite receptive. Banks are quite receptive for that information. UK banks particularly seem to be grateful for it. But of course, I never hear the feedback from them to say, well, actually we've managed to stop a few scams. I never get that feedback. I don't really need it though. I'm just glad to be able to pass that on to them, that they can use it.
So that's ultimately how the funds get out. And you say they're readily available, but people don't buy a long list in advance because probably maybe after a few days there's a chance that they won't be active anymore. They could have been closed down, so the scammer effectively would have invested in something that has no value anymore. So yeah, so this is all happening in real time, hence the need for these sort of real time defences. So that's where money's transferred. But I think as well, there's again other types of scam where there's no money, and I think like iPhones, for example, and the purchase scams. Let's dig at that a little bit.
That was a recent one. If you're ever in the UK and you've got a mobile phone, you will probably have got this call, and it starts off with, "This is O2. We're going to give you a 40% discount," and you think, okay, that sounds all right, and the scam starts off with, yes, we're going to give you, your mobile phone bill will be just £7 a month for the next 3 months, which sounds great, and obviously with mobile phone companies competing with each other, this is the kind of thing that happens from time to time. But the difference with this one is the scammer will tell you, we're going to send you a discount code to your mobile phone. But if you don't read it carefully, we're going to send you a security message and a discount code. Can you read back the discount code to me? And if you don't read that message carefully enough, the message actually says, we're resetting your password. Don't reveal this PIN to anyone. But if you just glance at it and read back that code, and a lot of people do, they have, at that moment, they've gained access to your mobile phone account. So whether it's O2, Vodafone, or whoever, a scammer has just reset your password, logged in as you, and then they're at the point where they can order the most expensive mobile phone it's possible to buy, and that's exactly what they do. And when they're on the phone with you and they've told you that we're going to give you this discount, they'll tell you, I'm going to send you the paperwork tomorrow. Please expect some paperwork. And you're okay. The next day, you receive not paperwork, but a very expensive mobile phone, and you will call them up because they've sent you an email as well from something that looks like your mobile provider, but it'll be o2shop.uk instead of o2.co.uk. You may not notice it, but on there will be a phone number there, and they will say, "Oh, you call them up and go, why have I got this very expensive phone?" And they go, "Very sorry, sir, madam, that was meant for another customer. You need to return that to our returns department. Here's the address. And, we'll pay for the postage and everything." They will give you an address for you to post your phone. And of course, all they've done there is they've bought a phone on your account, and you have now just sent that phone to another type of mule who will live in that address, or supposedly live in that address. In fact, those addresses, because I've dug into this a little bit, are typically vacant properties, and it's delivered to this address. Someone will be paid to go on a bike or cycle to go and pick up those phones and bring them to another address. So they've stolen a mobile phone, all based on you reading out a one-time code.
So lots of different examples we've covered, lots of different types of scams, lots of different techniques, that need to be put in place either to identify them up front or also to detect them in flight, as we say. So I guess always the thought that comes to your head is, what's in it for you, Jim? Why do you do this? I mean, I can make guesses, but let's hear from you why you do this.
I mean, honestly, if you sit and listen to the calls, particularly the ones that affect older or vulnerable people, you can't help being affected by those calls. You can't just sit there and listen and do nothing. When you're in a position that you can see who they've just called, and you've got a bit of time, which I now do because I had a day job. This is now my day job. Why wouldn't I call the victim to help out? Because I can see what's going on. The long and short of it, I'm just sick of these scams. Everybody gets the phone calls. Even the way I started the whole thing off was, why isn't anybody doing something about these phone calls? And I thought, look, I'm an engineer. I know about computers, know about networks. Maybe I can do something, more than initially I thought I'll just make a clear recording of the scam happening. But then I thought, hang on, some of the guys who are actually running the scams, I know more about their computers than they do. So maybe I can reverse this a little bit. So that's where I started off. I thought, can I make a clear recording of it? Can I actually do something about the scams? And it's kind of evolved. And since the point of time where I've been able to hear the scammers actually making the calls to the victims, I'm thinking, look, I can't not intervene. I have to do something. So that's really why it started off. But now I'm doing this. Honestly, I really sincerely believe that if you know exactly how scams work, as in the detail of the scams, what people say to you to get money out of you, if you understand that, if you see the psychology behind it, if you see the techniques that they use, if something rings an alarm bell with you to say, I've heard something like that before, it might be a scam. My whole purpose at the minute is to put the detail of those scams onto the internet, onto YouTube primarily, and hopefully it triggers something that, even if the audio sounds the same, or it's a different company, or there's something that triggers in the back of your mind to say, this is something not quite right here, then I've done my job. Because putting the videos on, showing how real scams happen, is just part of what I think I'm here to do now. Mm-hmm. I've been doing it for a while. I enjoy doing it. There's no getting away from that. Obviously, YouTube is an income for me as well, so there's that part of it. But honestly, at this stage in my life even, I just want to put that out there to give scammers a worse day than they otherwise would. And if it helps people avoid scams, and I know it has because I've got feedback from other people, if it helps prevent scams, then it's well worth doing. So that's the reason.
Yeah, it's a very admirable thing that you do. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's lots of messages now. There's lots of campaigns in every country we look at. We work with them, help educate customers, help educate banks' customers about what to look for. I think where this needs to go now is to maybe tune this and actually make this more real for people to see. So rather than just warning messages, I think much more impactful, much more noticeable is the fact that when you hear somebody's relief when they realize that they've been scammed, but they haven't lost their money, or they've been attempted to be scammed, sorry, but there's been a defense and a block. That sort of message, even if it's just a 10-second, oh my God, thank you so much. That I think is what will stick in people's heads and help people remember when that happens to them, that this is something they need to look out for. So do you see, in terms of the types of scams and obviously the mule activity that then corresponds, do you see any differences between the geographies, or are you more impressed by the similarities that across geographies?
It would tend to be the similarities, honestly. They use the same scripts, and in the USA they have this script called the Customs and Border script, which basically they pretend to be US Customs, and if they will tell you or tell the victim that there's been drugs found on the south border of Texas, and this all relates back to you, and they're not sure whether somebody's stolen your identity, and what you have to do is basically go in and prove your innocence, and the way to get around any court proceedings is for you to go through this process where ultimately you buy gift cards. We'll not tell you that immediately. And that's a very well tried and tested script called US Customs and Border Patrol. And they adapted that script for use in Austria. And they actually had the same script, but instead of using the south border of Texas, they used the south border of Vienna. Not that Vienna has a border, but they will just say, well, we'll adapt this a little bit. The script works in this country. Hey, it'll work here if we just change a few place names. And that's exactly what they've done. Same script.
And again, cash cards, prepaid cards, possibly bigger in some countries than others, would you say? And I don't know, any insights into why that might be?
When it comes to gift cards particularly, they're a huge advantage to a scammer because they're virtually untraceable. So you just need to call out a gift card number, and that can be laundered almost immediately. And there are websites which will take lots of these gift cards and basically convert them into cryptocurrency or other currencies for you. So again, it's your way of, without having to interact with banks or money transfer services or anything else, they can independently get your money just because you've read a gift card number out. So it's a huge advantage to a scammer. It's not traceable back to them. And of course, no organization will ever want payment in gift cards. So as soon as you hear the word gift card, or they won't call it gift card, usually they call it a government security card. Okay, they won't use the word gift card because that normally rings alarm bells with people. But if they can call it something else, but you've still got to go in and buy this thing and you've got to read out a number, it's a scam. No company would ever ask you to do that.
So it's easier way to get the money because you're bypassing some of the many controls that otherwise would be in place. But I suppose the downside for the scammer is that actually maybe trigger more alarm bells. So how do they get around that? As you described, they give it a different name. Yeah,
they give it a different name, and not only that, and finally, kind of stores in America particularly are kind of gearing up to this. There's been so many gift card scams that there are now lots of notices over gift cards. There's not so much in the UK, but I think it happens more in the US, where people are warned before they buy gift cards, look, you could be part of a scam here. No organization will ever ask for payment, in a gift card. And the tellers, the people who actually sell you those cards, or you will go to the teller to buy these things. Again, there's more and more activity I can see where people say, look, are you sure you didn't get a phone call before this? Is someone asking you to pay using a gift card? So they're training people into hopefully stopping scams even at the till, and I've seen that happen. But sometimes you're held to ransom, literally held to ransom, and if someone's gone onto your computer and it looks as if they've zeroed your bank balance, and the only way you're going to get your bank balance back is by following their instructions and buying gift cards, then even though you know you're being scammed and you can tell the person in the shop you're at, I know it's a scam, but I have to do this, then they have no choice, And that's the worst thing about it. I've seen a guy go into a store in Canada because he thought the scammer had access to his computer, and it looked like all of his life savings had been reduced to zero. And he actually forced him to go in and say, well, if you want me to restore your balance, go in and buy these gift cards and read out the gift card numbers to me. And only I was able to his mobile phone reception went off just at the point where he was about to buy these cards. I was able to get a phone call through to him. And at that moment, I said to him, look, don't worry about your balance in your bank account because it's all fake. The scammer had access to your computer. He can manipulate your screen to make it look as if there's zero in there. So don't worry about it. Don't buy those gift cards because you will lose the money if you do. And that was just in time. It was literally as he was buying the cards. So that was a last second save for that one.
So an event that the guy's probably done many, many times in his life, looked at his computer, seen his balance. Very, very hard not to believe that zero that you see is not actually true. How do they do that? How do they make it look like zero rather than the proper amount?
Yeah, it's actually incredibly easy. You just right-click your mouse and you can edit the text that you see on screen, close that little editing screen, and then for all intents and purposes, it looks as if you've set your balance to be zero or £1,000,000 or whatever else. But of course, it's only a temporary change. If you refreshed your screen, you would see the real bank balance come back. But it's a very commonly used scammer trick to make it look as if they've either given you money, okay, and then they want it refunded, or they're going to hold you to ransom and set your balance to zero, and that's exactly what happened there. So it's something that I wish banks would address a little bit, because you can disable that in JavaScript. And I'm amazed that UK banks and any banks don't just disable that, because it just, although it's not impossible to do, it makes life more difficult for scammers.
So you're saying they can actually go and edit the script that's on the screen, and even increase the amount, maybe like, as you say, the other scenario where you've got more money because we mistakenly paid money to your account. Can you pay it back to us, please?
Yeah. That's the refund scam. Refund scam is, it normally starts off with, there's been a suspicious amount in your account, or we're Amazon and we're going to charge you this. But if you don't want this charge to happen, then tell us and we can refund you. But the way you get your refund is the scammer will give you instructions what to type in your screen. But the first thing they do is they get you to download remote access software so they can see your computer. And when they can see your computer, they can also control your computer. They can control what you see on your screen. And they will distract you or blacken your screen, which is part of what the software does as well. And when you're distracted or that screen is black, they can go in and do that little editing trick and make it look as if instead of refunding the £80 that Amazon were going to give you, suddenly it's £8,000. And they go, oh my goodness, I put too much money into your account. This was a mistake. I'm going to lose my job. My wife and kids are relying on me. And they'll give you a complete sob story, and they rely on your generosity and making sure you're doing the right thing by returning the money. But of course, you're not returning their money. There was no money in there. They have set your extra amount to be just so happens exactly how much you've got in your account already. So they can steal all of your money, and you will be the one who will gratefully return this overpayment without realizing there was no money to begin with. If you've got a mobile phone, so an Android or an iOS phone, they can easily detect the presence of a remote access tool. So a lot of the big banks I've seen say, look, you can't view your bank balance because you've got AnyDesk or TeamViewer installed. And that's a good thing. It's a very good thing. And I wish all banks would catch up on that. Actually, the UK banks are well ahead of American banks, because I haven't seen that implemented across in the USA yet, and I'm hoping it'll come soon, because again, it doesn't completely prevent scams, but it makes that life a little bit more difficult for the scammers.
And anything you see that maybe is changed in the recent times that's maybe emerging that we should be calling out as the direction of travel for these scams as defences improve?
I've got to say, even in the last 10 years, it used to be that small amounts of money would come out. The amount of money that they know they could probably get away with. So £500, £1,000, they could usually steal that without too much of a risk. What has changed over the last few years is the fact that everybody uses mobile banking. Everybody usually can use their computer or their mobile phone to check on their bank balance. And because scammers know that they're likely to be able to see the amount, the actual amount that they can get away with, they will do everything they can to figure out what that amount is. Is it through a remote access tool and they can see your mobile screen? Or do they just plain ask you where your bank, verify your last transactions and verify your balance? Just tell me what that balance is. So it has gone from £500, £1,000 to every single penny you've got.
Because people can now see the balance, whereas before they wouldn't be able to check, so it would be difficult to ask for too large amount because probably people don't have that money in their account anyway, and the payment would fail.
That's right. That's
wow.
right.
Wow, that is a shift. Something to look after. And when those payments happen out of the account, in the case of the impersonation scams, for example, does it tend to be one payment come out, or do they try and stage it in several payments?
If a victim has a very large amount of money, say more than £100,000, even with the best banking systems in the world, you can't move more than 10 or 20,000 in one go. So absolutely, they know what the limits are. In fact, they'll deliberately try and target an amount that shouldn't trigger too many bank caution systems. I had one victim from the southwest of England, and she had quite a substantial amount of money in her account. By the time that I started to see what was going on, they had already drained £100,000 from this woman's account. And they knew she had double that, and they were at the point where they were starting the next 100,000. But again, this was all done over a period of months. Now, she was eventually lucky to get the money back or refunded, because realistically the bank should have spotted that pattern of behaviour, but didn't.
We could go on all day, Jim, just talking through some of these scenarios, and you know, obviously we learn from that and help our customers as well to put in the right defences. I don't know if they're back online yet, or whether we have a look.
I think there's one here, so we'll try and do something live here if we can. So what I'm doing at the minute is looking at the dialing system which is used by the scammers, and I'll play the message first of all that the victim will hear. So what they do is they make thousands and thousands of phone calls with the same message, and this is what the message sounds like. So let me play that first. So if you're sitting at home, you will hear a message which sounds like this coming onto your phone.
This call is from Bank Security Department. We have received 2 charges from your card this morning. The first charge is of £300 from Amazon, and the second charge is of £1,100 on an international money transfer website. We believe these to be suspicious and unauthorized transactions, as you have never used these services in the past through your card. To allow these transactions, press 1. To cancel or speak to our support team, press 2. Thank you.
So that message is the actual audio which is played to thousands and thousands of phones in the UK. And if you press 1 or 2, it doesn't really matter what you press, you will be through to a scammer. And we're going to listen to the chat between the victims and the scammers. And we're going to listen to a few calls live here. So let me just set something up so that we can start to listen to them.
And these are calls that are already in progress, and they've been going on for a number of minutes.
Yes, so this particular call we're going to listen to has been going on for over a minute, so let's have a listen.
Sorry, forget it. Bye.
Okay, somebody didn't believe them there, but we're going to listen to a few more.
So that's the numbers game. After 1 minute, many cases people know and just switch off.
Correct, okay. Yeah. So we're going to listen to a few more. I want to listen to one who's been sitting for the longest time here, so we're going to have a quick listen to this person.
So how long is this one?
So their call rates aren't particularly great at the moment, so this one's just 30 seconds long.
Now, I may have the wrong one.
That's not the number.
Well, that's what I've got written down.
I have told you the number twice, all right?
Well, what is the number?
The number is...
Well, I haven't anything. Now, wait a minute.
No, it's a wrong number. Do you have a mobile phone with you?
Sorry?
Do you have a mobile phone with you?
No, I've only got one phone.
All right.
Okay.
Now, tell me the number once again.
This is the
Cancel
second
that
second
number. I'm
part of the
providing you once
scam. So
again.
she's been told to ring another number, which is her bank's
Well,
fraud
I keep
department.
taking these
but
numbers and I
she's-
can't get through on any of them.
The reason why
So
she can't
what
get
is
through
it
on any of this,
now?
I keep calling or I contact
Who
the
took that
people who
number?
provide the phone numbers, and I get them blocked.
I've taken that number.
Well,
You
listen.
don't want to call on that number?
We'll listen to another
No,
one,
well,
okay? Because
I've
that's
tried
unusual,
it,
that
and I
call.
can't-
But
So in that case, yeah, it's a tip. Jim, you've gone in and the number they've given her to call to make this payment illegally is you've blocked it basically.
Correct, yeah.
and that'll be
So-
blocked until they create a new one. In which case, then we have to run the game again. Yeah,
exactly. So this is because this is a two-stage scam, and the second stage is they give the victim another number to call. That's a weak spot in there. So I have been over the last few weeks tying up that number with just empty calls. I just keep the scammers on, keep that number engaged so that the real victims can't get through. But I also, because you keep doing that all day, I also contact the people who issue that UK phone number. There's a lookup you can do to see who provide that number. And there's a number of organisations who do. I contact that organisation to say, scammers are using this number, here's the evidence. And they usually react quite quickly. So the number that she just quoted there, I had that one banned and blocked yesterday. So the scammers are not getting any phone calls from victims at the moment because I'm kind of listening to these calls, hearing what the second step in the scam is, and just getting that number blocked.
hopefully it keeps blocked for as long as possible.
If you want to listen to a few more of their calls, so we can listen to some more here. So here's another one.
Time last week, I think that a bit before.
Okay, ma'am. Let me tell you that as this isn't fraudulent, there has been two transactions which has been placed today at the morning from your debit card. The first transaction was of £300, which has been made on Amazon, and the second transaction was of £1,100, which has been made to an overseas country, California. So do you know anything about these two transactions?
No, I don't know anybody in California anyway for us.
Apart from you, is there anyone else who deals with your finances, can make a transaction, any of your friends or family member?
No, no, nobody gets it. But just me. It's only in my name, and
You are the sole user of your debit card and your account,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
So as this isn't fraudulent transaction, first of all, we need to go ahead and block this transaction. So can you just let me know that which branch do you deal most of the time for yourself?
Oh, I have the bank. It's
Sorry?
the bank,
As we are also from the ma'am, I just wanted to know the location where it is located.
Oh, I live in so I'll just go up to the bank.
Okay. Now let me go ahead and block the transaction for you. But before we do that, can you just let me know that how do you check your bank statement? Like, do you check with the post which you get every month by us?
Oh, I don't get it every month, but I get a sheet every now and again, and I can check everything.
Can you just be handy with the last sheet which you got from us? I'm holding the line for you.
Oh, I couldn't because I don't even know where it is.
Not
I'm
an
sorry.
issue. Not an issue. And do you remember where is your debit card at this point of time? Is it with you or it has been stolen or misplaced? Just have a double check.
I think it's in my purse. Hold on.
Take your time.
Take your time. Scammers always have infinite patience when it comes to people fetching credit card or debit card cards themselves or bank statements. So he will be as patient as he needs to be. Now, he's already picked up probably this lady's name and date of birth already, and he's going to be interested very soon in just how much money she's got in her account. So he will ask a few questions. First of all, what are recent transactions? You see anything suspicious? Then eventually we'll ask for what's your balance.
My card's not in my purse.
It's there with you, correct? It is there with you, correct?
I can't hear you.
The card is with you, correct? It has not been stolen or misplaced.
Oh, no, I don't lend anybody my card or lend it out to anything.
So now what we need to do, ma'am, as this is a fraudulent transaction, first of all, we need to mail everything about this to the anti-fraud department of the bank. So did you ever had a word with the anti-fraud department of the bank?
I don't know what you're talking about, really. But the sooner my son gets my money, I give him my card.
Okay, now let me tell you, ma'am, can you just let me know that do you remember what was the available balance on your account before this fraud has been done?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I only get a sheet every now and again.
Sorry?
I only get a sheet now and again, letting you know exactly what you've spent and how much you've got in and all the rest of it. But my son's got them. He keeps them.
And the card is with you, correct? The debit card is just with you, correct?
Just a minute.
Now, she's mentioned her son there, so he'll probably be giving
the bank card, the bank debit card.
He'd probably give advice not to talk to the son.
No, I haven't got it. I haven't got it with us. My son will have it.
Do you have that with yourself? Just check it.
See, I fell and broke my leg, and I can't walk about, so my son does everything for me.
And is it possible for you today to come down to the branch?
Pardon?
Is it possible for you today to come down to the branch?
Not really. You mean the branch of...
Correct.
He'll try and push it for it, though.
Sorry?
Even though she's got a broken leg.
I can't walk that far.
Okay. And how far is that branch?
Well, I live at one end of... And that's it's...
And is there no local branch nearby you? Of the...
That's the one it's between is the one I use.
Okay, you can go down to that branch, correct?
Yes, I go there.
Okay,
Or my
now what you
son
need to...
does.
Okay. Sorry?
If I can't get out because I'm over 90, my son will do it.
Okay. And the last time you visited by yourself, correct? You visited by your own. You haven't visited with your son.
Oh, it's quite well since that, because I haven't walked. I fell and broke my leg as well, so I was stuck.
Okay. I would be calling you back tomorrow when you would be getting the debit card with yourself, okay?
Right-o. I'll get in touch with my son.
Correct. Just get the debit card with your son and I will be calling you back tomorrow. It was nice talking to you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Right.
So you heard that there was a lot of red flags for that scammer there. Number one, she couldn't go today. She had a bad leg. She was getting her son involved. So even though he didn't find out the balance, there were too many things there that would mean that the scam probably wouldn't have succeeded. So he gave up on her. He said he'd call her tomorrow, probably won't call her tomorrow. Maybe he will, I don't know. But I think that was unlikely to result in a scam, so he's given up.
And you think she's going to be left in sort of a worried state? Or think when she speaks to her son, you think...
I think I would like to hope that if she mentions it to her son, that he'll tell her, look, check with the bank. And if she does check with the bank, they'll say, look, we didn't make those calls. I'd like to hope that would happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you get... We'll listen to the person who's gonna... So you can hear the start of this. We'll listen to the person who's been sitting idle longest, and they should get the next call. And you'll hear the opening of the scam. So, again, that message is played, the audio. and then they'll say hello. They usually say, instead of your bank name, because that would be too specific, to say this is Visa Security Department. That's usually the way they open it.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. My name is Jordan from Visa Security Department, sir. How can I help you?
Yeah, you just called me, so I'm wanting to know what you got to tell me.
All right. Can I have your name, sir? Your full name?
Yeah, my name's...
He sounded too skeptical, that guy. What are you going to tell me?
So she just cut off.
Just cut off, yeah. They're this is their business, so they need to make this as snappy as possible. And if you have any possibility of being skeptic, if you ask questions.
Thanks for calling Visa. This is Peter. How may I help you?
I don't know. You rang me about my bank account. Again. For about the 10th time, and it's always the same amount of money. Are you guys really that stupid that you think that I'm going to fall for it?
Just hung up. So most people know this is the point. There's another one.
I made the transaction £300 and £1,100.
No, not as far as I'm aware.
But according to in my system, that amount has been made by your card details. If you haven't authorized, how will this happen, sir? Do you have any idea about it?
No, I don't know. I'm a little bit confused as to why that sort of money's been taken from my bank account.
Yes, this is the only reason you get connected here, whether you have sent that amount or not. If you haven't authorized, this means we need to find it out. We need to work on at that. How has this happened? Who have tried to use your card details? We have to investigate on it. Okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely, yeah.
All right. So you just cooperate with me. I can go ahead and find it out exactly how has this happened.
Yeah,
Who made the transaction? These all are.
I've got a question for you. Do you know how and when it happened?
Just a couple of hours ago it happened.
A couple of hours ago. You must have an exact time of when it happened, because you should be able to see that information in your system, right?
No. There are not proper information in front of me here.
You don't have the proper information in front of you. But I thought you were calling from...
All right.
Too skeptical. They don't like people who ask questions. That's the thing. You have to follow instructions, and if you scammers absolutely hate people who ask questions, particularly relevant ones. And if you're in any way skeptical, you can hear there they just hang up the phone, go to the next person, and only if you comply and answer their questions will they continue with it. We'll move to the next one. Maybe there's one which has been going on for a little while longer. Here's 1 2 minutes 10 seconds in.
Is that right?
Yes. That's on the above. That's on where my name is. It's above there.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the one you want.
You can look onto your debit card, just left-hand side bottom. You can see there is a 6-digit short code printed there. Only 6 digits. You can see over there, left-hand side bottom now.
Bottom. Is that?
No.
No.
Do you remember your local branch name?
Yes.
And where is the base, your banking organization?
I don't. It's.
Can you please look onto your debit card, ma'am?
Yes.
You take your debit card handy with you.
Yes.
And see, just left-hand side bottom, there is a 6-digit code printed there, only 6 digits.
1 2 3 4 Left-hand side.
Yes?
Yes. That's like a date, isn't it? It's.
All right. I think you might give me the wrong. Could you please read out your full long number which you can see in your debit card?
The full long one, yes.
I don't know if you can get the bank name.
Try to put your details to in our server and then check what's going on.
Actually, you probably can.
Bear with me.
I think the bin codes would give him the issuing bank, so that's what he wants to get from that.
All right, just bear with me. As I can pull up your account information, as I can see, ma'am, there is a 2 different transaction took place onto your account, which is goes to the California, and the first charge is £1,000, which is goes to California, and the person name is John Cole. Do you know anyone like the name is John Cole?
No.
And have you made any payment in California on this morning?
No. I haven't used my card today.
Okay. And is there one more charge to place onto your account? The charge is £300 purchasing Amazon Pay gift card. Have you purchased anything in Amazon on this morning?
No.
All right. So it seems like it's a fraudulent transaction took place onto your account, ma'am. That's why we can see in our server before past years ago, you haven't made any international payment. Is that right?
I think so, yes.
All right.
I haven't.
So, apart from you, have you gave your card information to anyone like your friends?
My daughter's got it.
Your daughter's got it. Did you give your power of attorney to your daughter?
Yes, to my daughter.
Are you gave your power of attorney?
Well, when I was ill, they can use my card.
Oh, she just used your card. You didn't give your power of attorney.
No.
Okay. You're also dealing with us.
Yes.
All right.
She's got a card.
And when was the last time you went to the bank? Do you have any idea?
Oh, that's a couple of weeks ago. I haven't been. Haven't been out into town.
And do you deal any sorts of online banking with us?
No, not what I think. I don't know. Not what I know of.
Okay. Like the last time you go to the bank, and I believe that you receive a paper statement from the bank every month. Is that right?
No, I don't. But unless my daughter does it, if it comes through on that.
Does it.
Yeah.
But you're also going to the bank for doing some work like making some transaction. Also, if you need some money when your daughter is not there, then you will go to the bank.
Yeah,
yes, is that right?
Yes.
If it is very necessary, then you go to the bank.
Yes.
So right now,
I just use my card often,
often, all right.
Yeah.
And can you please confirm me, is it your debit card is with you or with your daughter?
My debit card's with me.
Is it with you? All right. Thank you so much. And this time, ma'am, there is some fraud happen going into your account, because these days there is so many telephonic scam going on into our country. So it's not been quite safe at the moment. We are and I'm just having an email from the headquarters department of the itself. They are saying that your card information is being compromised in California, which is those fraudsters can do. They can register online banking through your card information and try to charge you like £1,000 and £300. But then we know that then you receive a verification call. Is that you or someone else? But we can see you're saying that you haven't made any transaction on these days. So how will it will be possible? So it is a fraud payment took place onto your account, and this time your card information is being compromised in California. So we don't want you to lose a single penny behind this investigation. So you just bear with me on this line, and I'm just trying to tell you the one thing. It is very, very serious matter. So don't try to tell anyone about this investigation, okay? It has not been quite safe at the moment. Your account is at risk, and you are not the only one customer who having this kind of problem. There is 12 another customer having the same kind of problem in the same branch.
Yes.
So if it is very necessary to go to the bank today, would you like to
I can't go to the bank, sorry.
Why?
Because I can't drive at the moment.
Is that any problem today?
Yes.
Tomorrow you will be go?
No, I can't. At the moment, I can't drive. So I can't get into town.
How far is your bank with you? Can you help me out? Your postal code? Okay. So when you are well to go to the bank, when is the good date to go to the bank? Like, it is a matter of fraud, ma'am. So I don't want to involve anyone about this investigation. Either also your daughter. So it is very
Well, I'm
necessary.
sorry, I can't at the moment. I can't get into town.
And do you deal in sorts of online banking with us?
I don't. If anything, my daughter does it for me. She's got power of attorney of my property.
Yeah, so he gave up on that, and you heard him curse at the end there too. Obviously, when the daughter was mentioned and power of attorney, he knew he wasn't going to get anywhere. So, in a lot of ways, power of attorney really helps people. You heard that pretty dramatically there. But he just told her where to go at the end because he wasn't getting his way.
So again, another example where she'll probably talk to her daughter, and the daughter would just say, "Of course, that's not your bank, right?" And put her mind straight. But for now, yeah, she's pretty distraught and wondering what's going on. Yeah.
I mean, I have called people in the past who sound distressed and say, "Look, don't worry about it. It wasn't genuine," and but hopefully she will talk to her daughter anyway.
Yeah.
With any luck, and the daughter should say, "Look, it's a scam. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
So that's it. That's if you're a scammer, that is your day, and you can hear the same lines over and over again. They've got a well-rehearsed script, and like I say, if you're in any way skeptical, or you can't go to the bank, or you've got somebody else who you're going to be talking to, you're no longer fair game. They want somebody on their own, somebody who doesn't want to ask too many questions and just straight out believes them.
Yeah. We mentioned that you are on YouTube today, and you get quite a lot of views on that. Do you glean anything from that? How does that operate? What do people, do you think, get out of it? And what do you learn from those comments people leave?
Yeah, well, I mean, I get lots and lots of comments. Because I dig into scams a little bit deeper than I guess the average person can, I suppose I get a lot of feedback which say, like, it's great to see these and understand them. And for me, that was always the goal anyway. If you can show in detail exactly how the scam works, it's much, much more effective, I think, than a few bullet points of what to do, what not to do. They have to be strangely entertaining though as well, and I don't make any apologies for that because it's a serious business. Scams are serious business, but at the same time, I'd rather have something in the videos that gives people a reason to watch them. So sometimes it's not always about this poor person's lost money. Sometimes if you can get your own back just a little bit with scammers. So I mean, I've even gone to the extreme of hooking up with other YouTubers who, if you've heard of Mark Rober, he has this little package that for package thieves. He will leave something on his doorstep, and if a thief takes it and opens it, it sprays him with glitter, and it records it on these phones which are buried inside the box. And just for a bit of a laugh, we knew where this scam call centre was, and we had CCTV, and we thought, wouldn't be a nice idea to deliver one of those packages to very harmless package, of course, wouldn't do anything too serious, but again, it's just to get a little bit of kickback at scammers. They don't always have it their own way. And I think, if anything, what the videos show is, particularly if I can get the things rated and closed down, they don't always get it their own way. And I think that's what adds to the entertainment value of it. Sometimes it's serious and it's good to alert people to what's happening in the world of scams. But equally, it's nice to get one over on scammers from time to time, just to show they don't always get it their own way. And it is possible to do something about it. Everybody thinks that you get these phone calls and they're impossible to stop. Well, that's maybe, if you look at these videos, it's not quite the truth. It's difficult. I wish more could be done with it. But at the same time, it is possible just to get a little bit of revenge on scammers. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Jim, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much for your time. I think we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about the similarities of all these different types of scams that go on across the world. We've also seen about some of the differences and how the nuances are and how they're played out. But ultimately, it comes back, I think, to the victim, the impact that has on their lives, and always bearing that in mind in everything that we do. And that's what helps drive us. I know it drives you, but also it drives us in what we do to help protect those victims.
And I'm glad that there are people here taking the battle to scammers as well. So in a lot of ways, we're fighting the same people. So it's great to speak to Feed's Eye and for other people who do similar jobs. So thank you again, Robert.
Thank you, Jim.